I'm still trying to make sense of what happened to me that Halloween night 10 years ago. I've never told this story publicly before, but after browsing through similar experiences here, I feel like maybe someone might have seen something similar or can help me understand what I encountered. I was 6 years old, spending Halloween with my cousin's family in Ravenbrook, this small town that's always weirdly foggy, especially in October. My parents had dropped me off earlier that day because they both had to work late, and my aunt had promised them I'd have the full Halloween experience in their suburban neighborhood. The night started normally enough. My aunt helped me into my Spider-Man costume while my cousin Jake, who was 9, dressed as some video game character I didn't recognize. We went trick-or-treating with a bunch of other neighborhood kids, and I remember being so excited about filling my plastic pumpkin bucket with candy. By around midnight, most of the trick-or-treaters had gone home. Jake had already gone inside to watch horror movies with his friends, which I wasn't allowed to join because I was too little. My aunt and uncle were in the front yard with some neighbors, drinking something from red cups and laughing too loudly at everything. I remember feeling annoyed because my aunt kept pinching my cheek every time I walked past her and telling everyone how adorable I was. I just wanted some space to myself. Jake had left his bike leaning against the garage, and I decided to take it for a ride. I wasn't supposed to, but everyone was distracted. The street was completely empty by this point, so I figured I could just ride down the middle of the road where they could still see me, but where I wouldn't have to deal with the adults. I was probably about 15 yards from the adults when it happened. This incredibly bright light just appeared out of nowhere. It was so sudden and intense that I had to squint. It completely filled my vision, like someone had turned on a spotlight directly in my face. My first thought was that it was a car with its high beams on, so I immediately started turning the bike toward the sidewalk. The weird thing is, I didn't hear any engine noise, no tires on pavement. Nothing. When the light faded a few seconds later, there wasn't any car there at all. The street was still empty, except it wasn't. About 20 yards down the road stood something. I still get goosebumps trying to describe it. It was a figure, but not human-sized. This thing was enormous. It had to be as tall as the power poles lining the street, maybe 15 or 20 feet high. The streetlights were dim and flickering, and the fog wasn't helping, but I could make out enough to see that it had an unnaturally skinny frame, like someone had stretched a person vertically. Its arms seemed too long for its body, hanging down past where knees would be. Its skin was this sickly pale color, and the weirdest part was that it seemed partially transparent, like I could almost see through parts of it. I couldn't make out any face from where I was standing, just this vague head shape on top of this impossibly tall, thin body. I immediately thought of Slender Man, which Jake had shown me pictures of earlier that day to scare me, except this thing seemed naked, or at least not wearing any kind of suit. The strangest part about the whole encounter was how I felt. I should have been terrified. I was looking at some kind of monster, but instead, I just felt confused. It was like my brain couldn't process what I was seeing, so it wasn't sending the right "be afraid" signals. I just stood there, straddling Jake's bike in the middle of the road, trying to make sense of what I was looking at, for what felt like forever, but was probably only 30 seconds or so. Neither of us moved. It just stood there and I just stared at it. Then it started walking toward me. The movement was all wrong, stiff and awkward, like its joints weren't bending properly. Each step was slow but covered a lot of distance because of how tall it was. I remember the sound its feet made on the pavement. Not footsteps exactly, more like a soft sliding noise. I still didn't run. I was frozen in place, just watching this thing approach. Then, when it was maybe halfway to me, it suddenly stopped. It turned to its right, our right, making this weird jerky motion like its upper body turned first and then its lower body caught up. Then it started walking that way, leaving the road and moving onto the sidewalk. There was this small path there that led down to a creek that ran through the neighborhood. It was poorly lit and surrounded by trees. The creature took that path, and within seconds disappeared into the darkness. One moment it was there, this massive figure shambling away, and the next it was gone. Only then did my body seem to remember how to move. I dropped Jake's bike right there in the road and ran back to my aunt's front yard. My heart was finally racing, and I felt cold all over despite the mild night. When I got back to the adults, they were still laughing and talking, completely oblivious to what had just happened. Did you guys see that?" I asked, my voice shaking. My aunt looked down at me, her face flushed from whatever she'd been drinking. "See what, sweetie?" I opened my mouth to tell them about the giant creature, but stopped myself. Even at 6, I knew they wouldn't believe me. They'd think I was making it up for attention, or that I'd been scared by Halloween decorations. So instead I said, "I saw a raccoon over there," and pointed vaguely in the direction opposite from where I'd seen the creature. "Oh, they're all over the place this time of year," my uncle said dismissively. "Just stay away from them. They can bite." I nodded and went inside, claiming I was tired. The rest of the night passed normally. I slept on a trundle bed in Jake's room, listening to him and his friends giggling at the horror movies they weren't supposed to be watching. My parents picked me up the next morning, and I never told anyone what I'd seen. For months afterward, I had nightmares about that figure. In my dreams, it would always be walking toward me, never quite reaching me, but getting closer and closer. Sometimes I'd dream that I was looking out my bedroom window at night and would see it standing in our backyard, just staring up at my window. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, afraid to look outside. I tried to rationalize it as I got older. Maybe it was just some Halloween decoration someone was moving, but it was too big, too fluid in its movements. A person on stilts? The proportions were all wrong, and no stilts could have made someone that tall. A shadow from a car's headlights? But there was no car, and shadows don't move independently. The longer I've gone without an explanation, the more the details have stayed vivid in my mind. Most childhood memories fade or get distorted over time, but this one remains crystal clear. The way the light appeared before the creature showed up, the strange sliding sound when it walked, the jerky motion when it turned, the way its skin seemed to let some light pass through it. I've never seen anything like it again, and I've never had any other paranormal experiences. Just this one inexplicable encounter on Halloween night when I was 6 years old. I went back to Ravenbrook a few years ago, just to see if being there might trigger some realization. Maybe I'd recognize some Halloween decoration that matched what I saw, or maybe the perspective of the street would reveal how a normal object could have seemed so bizarre to a child. But nothing there explained it. The creek path is still there, though it's better lit now. I walked down it during the day, half expecting to find something, I don't know what, that might explain what I saw. There was nothing unusual. I've spent 10 years trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, some trick of the light, combined with the excitement of Halloween and a 6-year-old's tendency to see monsters in ordinary things. But no matter how I try to explain it away, I know what I saw. That thing was real as the bike I was riding or the road beneath my feet. Sometimes when it's foggy outside, especially around Halloween, I find myself scanning the streets, looking up at the height of the power poles, wondering if I'll see it again. Part of me hopes I never do, but another part wants confirmation that I wasn't just a kid with an overactive imagination, that there really was something tall and strange and impossible standing in that street in Ravenbrook, watching me before it turned and walked away. If anyone else has seen something similar, or if you've heard local legends about Ravenbrook that might explain what I encountered, please let me know. For 10 years I've kept this to myself, but I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, someone else has seen the same thing I did. Story 19. I still can't fully explain what happened during what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation in Hawaii last month. I've tried to make sense of it, tried to convince myself there was some logical explanation, but I can't. Not after what happened to both me and my buddy. I'd been planning this Hawaiian getaway for months. Work had been brutal. 14-hour days at the office, constant deadlines, the whole thing. I needed a break, somewhere beautiful where I could just decompress. I found this condo at the Hilton Turtle Bay Resort on Oahu's North Shore that looked perfect. 2 bedrooms, ocean view, reasonable price for a week-long stay. I booked it immediately. The flight from California was long, but uneventful. I remember feeling this wave of relief when I finally stepped off the plane in Honolulu. The air was different, warm, slightly humid, with that distinct tropical smell that instantly puts you in vacation mode. After picking up my rental car, I made the drive to the North Shore, windows down, just soaking in the scenery. The resort was exactly what I expected. Beautiful grounds, palm trees swaying in the breeze, that perfect blue Hawaiian ocean stretching out to the horizon. Check-in was smooth, and I was excited to see the condo I'd be calling home for the next week. My friend Jake was supposed to join me the next day, so I had the place to myself for the first night. The condo was on the 2nd floor of one of the resort buildings. It was nicer than the pictures online. Spacious living room with a comfortable-looking couch, fully equipped kitchen, sliding glass doors leading to a balcony with an ocean view, and 2 bedrooms. The main bedroom upstairs was large with a king-sized bed and its own bathroom, while the 2nd bedroom downstairs was smaller with a queen bed. After unpacking, I headed straight to the beach. There's nothing like that first day at the beach after months of being stuck in an office. I spent hours just swimming, lying in the sun and walking along the shoreline. By the time the sun started to set, I was exhausted in the best possible way, that pleasant kind of tired you feel after a day in the sun. I grabbed dinner at one of the resort restaurants, had a couple of Mai Tais and headed back to the condo. It was around 10 when I finally decided to call it a night. I'd already decided to take the main bedroom upstairs. It had the better view and the bigger bed. Plus, I figured I'd let Jake have it when he arrived the next day. The room was comfortable, with a ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead. I remember lying in bed, feeling that pleasant exhaustion washing over me, listening to the distant sound of waves crashing on the shore. I was right on the edge of sleep, in that hazy state where you're not quite conscious but not fully asleep either. That's when it happened. "Get the fuck out of my room!" The scream jolted me fully awake. It was a woman's voice, filled with rage, and it sounded like she was standing right next to the bed. I shot upright, heart pounding, adrenaline surging through my body. I fumbled for the lamp on the nightstand and switched it on, fully expecting to see someone standing there. But the room was empty. I got out of bed and checked the bathroom, the closet, even under the bed. Nothing. I went downstairs and checked the entire condo, thinking maybe someone had broken in. All the doors and windows were locked. I was completely alone. My rational mind immediately tried to make sense of what had just happened. I'd heard about hypnagogic hallucinations before. Those weird, dream-like experiences people sometimes have when falling asleep. That had to be it. I was tired, in an unfamiliar place. Maybe the Mai Tais had something to do with it. I convinced myself it was all in my head and went back upstairs. I got back into bed, turned off the light, and tried to calm my racing heart. It was just my imagination, I told myself. Just a strange hallucination as I was falling asleep. I was almost drifting off again when it happened a second time. I said, "Get the fuck out!" The same woman's voice, the same rage, the same proximity, like she was screaming directly into my ear. This time it was accompanied by a cold sensation that washed over me, as if someone had opened a window in the middle of winter. I've never moved so fast in my life. I was out of that bed and down the stairs in seconds, not even bothering with the light. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. That wasn't a hallucination. It couldn't be. It was too real, too specific. I spent the rest of the night on the couch downstairs with all the lights on. I didn't sleep a wink. I kept thinking I could hear footsteps upstairs, like someone pacing back and forth. At one point, I swear I heard a woman sigh heavily, the sound drifting down the staircase. When the sun finally came up, I felt ridiculous. Ghost stories and hauntings are for kids and horror movies, not real life. In the light of day, I tried to rationalize what had happened. Maybe there was some kind of sound system in the condo I didn't know about. Maybe the walls were thin and I was hearing a neighbor. But I knew deep down that neither explanation made sense. I called the front desk, asking if there had ever been any strange occurrences in the condo. The woman on the phone seemed confused by my question and assured me that there had never been any complaints about the unit. I didn't push it. I didn't want to sound crazy. Jake was supposed to arrive around noon. I spent the morning on the beach trying to shake off the events of the night before. I decided not to tell him about what happened. He'd think I was losing it, and besides, maybe it was just a one-time thing. When Jake arrived, we spent the afternoon catching up and exploring the resort. He was excited about the condo, especially when he saw the main bedroom upstairs. "Dude, you're giving me the master bedroom. That's awesome," he said when I told him he could have it. I shrugged casually. "Yeah, I'm good with the smaller room. The bed downstairs is plenty comfortable." I felt a twinge of guilt for not warning him, but what was I supposed to say? "Hey, by the way, there might be an angry ghost woman in that room who screams at you in the middle of the night. He'd think I was pranking him or just plain nuts." We had dinner at a local seafood place, had a few beers, and headed back to the condo around 9. Jake was tired from his flight and decided to turn in early. I stayed downstairs watching TV, partly because I wasn't tired yet, but mostly because I was anxious about what might happen to Jake upstairs. About 30 minutes later, I heard rapid footsteps coming down the stairs. Jake appeared in the living room, his face pale, his eyes wide. He was wearing just his boxers and a t-shirt, like he'd jumped out of bed in a hurry. "What the fuck, Michael?" he said, his voice shaking. "That's some serious dick move, not warning me." I felt my stomach drop. "Warning you about what? Don't play dumb. About whatever fucked up prank you just pulled." The voice, the screaming woman. "Was it some kind of recording you set up? Because it's not funny, man." My blood ran cold. "Jake, what exactly did you hear?" He ran a hand through his hair, still visibly shaken. "I was almost asleep when this woman's voice screamed right in my ear, telling me to get the fuck out of her room. It sounded like she was right there, man, right next to the bed." I couldn't speak for a moment. It was exactly what had happened to me, exactly the same experience, down to the words used. "I didn't set anything up," I finally said. "The same thing happened to me last night. That's why I gave you the upstairs bedroom. I thought maybe I was just hallucinating or something." Jake stared at me in disbelief. "You're serious?" I nodded. "Dead serious. I heard the exact same thing, a woman screaming at me to get out of her room. It happened twice." We stayed up late that night, trying to make sense of what we'd both experienced. We searched the entire condo again, looking for speakers, recording devices, anything that could explain the voice. We found nothing. "Maybe it's some kind of shared delusion," Jake suggested, but even he didn't seem convinced. Both of us having the exact same hallucination, using the exact same words. "That's statistically impossible," I said. We decided to both sleep downstairs that night. Jake on the couch, me in the downstairs bedroom. Neither of us wanted to go back upstairs. Before we went to sleep, I stood at the bottom of the stairs and spoke out loud, feeling ridiculous but desperate. "We're not leaving the condo," I said firmly. "We paid for this place, and we're staying. But we'll respect your space and stay out of the upstairs bedroom." I don't know if it made any difference, but we both slept undisturbed that night. The next day, we went to the resort's main office and asked if there had ever been any deaths in our condo unit. The manager seemed uncomfortable with the question, but eventually admitted that about 5 years ago, an elderly woman had passed away in the main bedroom of our unit. She had been a long-term resident who had lived there for over a decade. She was quite territorial about her space, the manager added hesitantly. She'd made complaints about previous tenants and cleaning staff being in her room. Jake and I exchanged glances. It seemed we had our answer. For the rest of the week, we both slept downstairs and left the upstairs bedroom untouched. We could sometimes hear footsteps up there, and once I swear I heard that same heavy sigh, but she never screamed at us again. On our last night, I left a note on the bed upstairs. "Thank you for sharing your home with us," it said. "I don't know why I did it. It just felt right somehow. The thing that still gets me, that I still can't explain, is how we both heard the exact same thing. If it had just been me, I could have written it off as imagination or too many Mai Tais. But Jake heard it too, word for word, with no prior knowledge of what had happened to me. I've tried to rationalize it since coming home. Maybe there was some kind of environmental factor in that room, carbon monoxide, infrasound, something like that. But none of those explanations seem to account for the specificity of what we heard. All I know is that something happened in that condo at Turtle Bay, something I can't explain. And to this day, whenever someone asks me about my Hawaiian vacation, I find myself hesitating before I answer.